Greetings, my good bitches. The name's Francis, Coke Francis. I'm an editor, Twitch streamer, drag artist, and I'm here because, has this ever happened to you? You're an American kid between the ages of 6 and 11. You're sitting at your desk, you're drawing the Stussy S over and over in your notebook when you're supposed to be learning about fractions, until the principal announces over the intercom that it's time to head to the cafeteria for an assembly. Naturally, you're ecstatic over the idea of doing anything but learning about fractions, or maybe that was just me. Anyway, instead of seeing JJ Bittenbinder or any of the other fun, wacky characters that John Mulaney talked about, you're greeted by a sleazy car salesman who calls himself something like Mr. Candy, or anything else that you've usually been told to avoid when walking near a minivan. And instead of a street smart orientation or anything remotely useful, you're flashed a whole bunch of prizes for some reason. They're not good prizes by any means, but you've probably seen them on the shelves at your favorite local rat casino, and you knew that you would never be good enough at Arctic Thunder to win any of them. To a kid aged 6 to 11, you might as well be winning a brand new Lamborghini. Then, Mr. Candy or whatever tells you that all of these prizes could be yours if you participated in the latest school fundraiser. All you had to do to win that prize keychain was to sell 100 chocolate bars or 200 rolls of wrapping paper to everyone you knew. You! A child who definitely had no sales experience, unless you're a Girl Scout, and you definitely didn't know more than 10 people in your life who had any kind of money. But not only could you win that keychain, if you sold more than anyone else in your class, you would be the one to treat your whole class to a pizza party. And you certainly wouldn't want to be the kid who prevented their whole class from a pizza party. If this unlocked any repressed memories for you, you were probably a kid in the United States from the 1970s onward. Any kind of kid, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status. Because our schools here get hardly any funding, they had, and still have, to rely on these dreaded school fundraisers, which sounds good in theory, but are ultimately scams that manipulate children into the world of hustle culture. Anyway, I randomly remembered these the other night when I was drunk and playing D&D, and I wanted to dive a bit deeper into this symptom of late-stage capitalism, which, when I think about it in retrospect, was really, really goddamn weird. It's been a while since I've done an anti-capitalism rant, so if you prefer my videos where I roast Osama bin Laden's anime collection, then maybe this video won't be for you. Or maybe it will. I don't know you. And because I personally hate seeing vulnerable people get scammed, I am proud to announce that this video is sponsored by Aura. Think about the number of spam calls and texts you get every day, which, if you live in the year of our Lord, 2025, is probably a lot. Have you ever found yourself second-guessing if a message you received or responded to was real or a scam? What about a time when you were waiting for a really important call and had to answer every unknown number just in case? I can't tell you how many times I've waited for a scheduled call with doctors or prospective employers and ended up hearing a robot apologizing for dropping her headset before launching into an automated pitch for Comcast Xfinity. Jokes aside though, if this has happened to you, it's because your data has been brokered to scammers worldwide. It's scary and it's exhausting to deal with, but the good news is that I hardly ever have to deal with that anymore because I use Aura. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, and will help remove your personal information from data brokers and people search sites that can sell your info to identity thieves, scammers, and many more. The less data of yours that's exposed, the less likely you'll get spam, and the less likely you'll experience identity theft. Aura safeguards your data with the same security standards as banks and the military, and will never sell it to third parties. Aura also offers a ton of other features to keep you safe online, including financial fraud protection, a VPN for secure browsing, a password manager, manager, an antivirus, and many more. I get all this in one app at one affordable price. I'm not leaving myself or my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can use my special link aura.com/QueenCokeFrancis to try 2 weeks for free, which is enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal information has been exposed. And with that, back to our regularly scheduled programming. So apparently, and this is what I found in my research, if any non-Americans want to add to this, please do so in the comments. The only school fundraisers that happen in other countries are for, like, charities, not the schools themselves. But here in the good old US of A, education is not only undervalued, it's kept behind a paywall from the time you enter to the time you leave. So for those of you who don't live in a late-stage capitalist hellscape and had no idea what I was talking about at the beginning, every year we'd have some weird dude come in to hold an assembly and show us all these cool prizes we could win if we sold as many things as possible for the latest school fundraiser. Sometimes it's chocolate, sometimes it's like frozen cookie dough, sometimes it's wrapping paper. I think my school was chocolate and wrapping paper. He'd say things like, "Let's put the fun back in fundraising," or something else super cringy like that. And this money would supposedly go towards the most basic aspects of like running a functional school. Not just like updating software or sports equipment or field trips, which should already be a thing anyway. I mean just like basic supplies and materials in general, or any extracurricular activities. So, since the government refuses to fund our schools, we have had to resort to whipping up an auditorium of literal children into a sales frenzy, not unlike those infamous MLM summits that are virtually indistinguishable from a megachurch.
They were in church when suddenly their pastor comes flying in from the ceiling when starting his speech.
And by children, I don't mean teens or even preteens. The first time I went to one of these assemblies, I was in the first grade. I was 7 years old. And as I mentioned earlier, since my ass couldn't even do basic fractions, I, like everyone else, sincerely believed that a plastic keychain was worth the same as 100 bars of chocolate. And if you sold even more, you might get a bike, moon shoes before they were outlawed, or even a GameCube, because this was the early 2000s. And most importantly, your whole class would get a pizza party. And you, of course, wouldn't want to be the one who prevented your class from having a pizza party. So then they'd give you all these little catalogs with all of the sellable items and their pricing, and you would take these catalogs home and excitedly wave them in your parents' faces, because this was simply too good to be true. Something they understood, but you didn't. And you looked at your mom with pleading eyes and showed her that keychain that you could just get if you sold all this shit, not realizing that they would have to buy the inventory in the first place. If you were lucky, like I was, she would tell you it's a scam. And when you argued with her and tried to show her what a great opportunity it was, she'd say something like, "I will literally buy this thing for you right now to prove that this is a scam." And then it would finally hit you. And then you wondered why the school that you trusted would even have you do something like this in the first place. But if you're like me, a small kiddo with an ADHD goldfish brain with no actual friends that they'd want to treat to a pizza party, you'd eventually forget all about it. And then every subsequent assembly, you just tune it out. Then you would randomly remember it 20 years later when you're drunk and playing D&D. At first, I was praying that I was simply experiencing a hallucination. Then I was hoping that these assemblies themselves were hallucinations. But the next morning, I verbatim Googled those weird school assemblies that tried grooming us into salespeople, and I found out that I was not alone, and that this wasn't just a product of being a child during the Bush administration and the rabid, gas-guzzling consumer culture that went with it. Anyone else have assemblies that were just hype events to sell Sally Foster wrapping paper for school fundraisers? What was that all about? Many school fundraisers are predatory and attempt to exploit child labor. Students that didn't raise money had to watch everyone else have fun. To think my school tricked an 8-year-old 20-year-old me into peddling magazine subscriptions door to door for this shit. I feel so cheap and used. Last night, I'm opening up my son's take-home folder, and I pull out a paper. I glance at it and realize what I'm holding. My entire demeanor changes. My stomach drops. Thunder and lightning shoot across the sky. The lights flicker. An evil witch cackles in the background. The walls ooze black slime. Sirens blared in the distance. From across the room, my husband sees my face. He says, "What's that?" I glare. He squeaks out, Is it?" I glare harder. "It's not a fundraiser, is it?" Glare intensifies. "It's not. He's not selling chocolate bars." The floor opens up and we can see ghostly demons shoot up from the ground. Fire surrounds us. Satan himself enters our living room, laughs, takes $120 right out of my purse, and hands me a prize fidget spinner. Now, I'm willing to bet that their justification for trying to turn these kids into salespeople was the fact that the responsibility for selling all this shit would usually fall on the shoulders of the parents. They're the ones with the jobs and connections and money, and they can simply bring the inventory to their office and tell their coworkers the whole deal. And again, they're the ones buying the goddamn inventory. But if your parents were just crazy enough to allow you to, you very well could just go door to door to sell this shit right out of your very own Harry Potter backpack. Now, that was back in my day, but since these fundraisers are somehow still a thing in the year of our Lord 2025, most of these sales have migrated to the internet and social media. So instead of getting a door slammed in your face, now you'll just get ghosted when you email or text people your special link. But again, these aren't teenagers or even preteens that we're talking about going online and filling out a bunch of sign-up information and pushing these products everywhere that's possible. We are talking about children currently at an age where they'll look around their room at night and see their desk chair turn into a ghoul. But that's the creepiest thing about this. When you start middle school, you're at an age where you start gaining self-awareness and you more or less know right from wrong. And you're somewhat more likely to identify injustice when you see it. You're somewhat more aware of how much certain things cost. You're still a very, very stupid child at this point, but you're definitely more precocious than you were a few years ago. These fundraisers do happen in middle schools and high schools, but it's especially weird that they also happen in elementary schools. Because between the ages of 6 and 10, you don't know most of these things. You're about to learn a lesson, and not in the building people and business skills way that they would like to have you believe. You're about to learn that schools in your country are so grossly underfunded that it's somehow your responsibility to keep it afloat. If you think this is messed up, it is. PTAs will have their own fundraisers as well, but they rarely raise enough money for what's needed. So schools then have to recruit a third-party fundraising company where they have that weird dude who, again, you would be told to avoid in any other context, offer junk prizes to kids so that they can be cogs in an almost $4 billion fundraising industry. School principals, PTAs, and parents that have been surveyed about this have been found to overwhelmingly prefer fundraisers that are not through third parties. Since, and this is like not surprising at all, the schools usually only keep 30 to 40% of the earnings while the third party gets 60 to 70%, which means these kids are also providing Mr. Candy with his paycheck. But when PTAs and other independent fundraisers aren't cutting it, there aren't a whole lot of other places for schools to turn. Now, all of my personal experiences with this are coming from someone who, in the grand scheme of the world, had a lot of privilege. I grew up squarely middle class, which is probably better than like 90% of the country right now. My neighborhood was a mostly white and Asian suburb with a lot of white-collar professional hot dads and a lot of scrapbooking stay-at-home moms. Basically, my elementary school was pretty much more or less well-funded anyway because public schools here get money from property taxes, and the parents could usually shell out money for stuff if necessary. But again, that is not the majority of the country, and I would rather focus on how these fundraisers affect low-income schools and families. Sarah Gonzalez from NPR's Planet Money did some digging on this, specifically looking at Villa Corta Elementary School in La La Puente, California, which is about 30 minutes east of LA. Villacorta is considered to be a low-income school, with about 90% of the students being economically disadvantaged and about 20% being unhoused. Sarah interviewed the principal, a kindergarten teacher, and 2 of the students that are on the honor roll and fundraising superstars. Maria Laris's main goal as a kindergarten teacher is to take her young students on a beach/boat trip, since most of them have never even seen the ocean. To put this in perspective, LA is like 30 minutes from the beach. But since the money that's raised through different means can only be dedicated to certain areas, Principal George Herrera has to prioritize these needs and budget them accordingly.
So everyone put your hands like this, pump them up and say big money. Big money!
Once a rep said, I can give you 50% of the profit of everything that students sell, which is not the usual split. Normally the company takes more, but for the school to keep 50% of the profit, there would be no prizes. And Maria was like, oh, no. We need the prizes.
The kids will get motivated by those prizes rather than saying, oh, it's all for your school. Just keep selling. You're doing great.
For Maria, there is something a little bit uncomfortable about all of this, turning kids into little salespeople or promising them all these prizes that they probably won't ever get because you have to sell like $1,000 worth of whatever just to get that Nintendo Switch Lite that really just costs like $200.
Economists would say, just give people the cash. If people need money, just give them the cash. Don't make them buy something. Don't make them volunteer. Just give them the thing that they need. And so I was curious, can you just ask people to donate money?
No. In my community, if you say, send me the $8 for the PJ, and they're like, what am I getting from that? What do I get? We have to get an incentive to go with it.
Oh, we have a medal coming in for you. It didn't get here in time, but it should be here when we come back from break.
What do you need the $40 for?
This was a particular, we wanted to buy medals that we want to give the students. And we're short a couple of medals. And I said, well, just let me order them now. And he goes, nope. But can we, nope.
Is this what you were telling Sophia when you were like, I have a medal for you, but it's not here yet?
Yes.
It's these are the medals? Oh my gosh.
Those are the medals we were talking about.
This was the principal's honor roll medal.
It's the principal's honor roll medal, yes.
So as you can see, schools like this are put in a very precarious situation. The PTA works their asses off and they still don't bring in enough. They can't just ask for donations because the community wants something in return. When they do use third-party fundraisers, because they take a majority of the cut, there still isn't enough money left for the school. And it's especially shitty to dangle all of these junky prizes in front of these kids, because for a lot of them, their parents can't just buy them for them to prove that the whole thing is a scam. Regardless of socioeconomic status, none of those prizes are junk to you as a child. It's really just a matter of whether or not your family has the means to buy them for you. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a bleeding heart leftist who has a vendetta against capitalism, but this shit makes me really sad. Now, by the time this video is posted, I'll be in my 30s, barf, and a number of things have changed about these fundraisers since I was in school. Obviously, there's the online presence that I mentioned earlier, which is eerily similar to the Facebook messages you get from that girl who bullied you in middle school and is trying to get you to join her pyramid scheme. And don't you worry, we'll be getting to that in just a minute. Anyway, meet these 2 jabronis. The first one is Riho, I don't care. A guy who brags about how he got rich by 18 by selling snacks at school. Maybe it's a good thing he did, because he looks like his profession is asking people for a lighter. We also have Papi Chulo TV, who I thankfully have more subscribers than. They have both made YouTube careers off of telling children how to sell snacks at school, how not to get caught, and what to do when caught. Now, I'm not a parent. I don't really know that many kids, and I'm an agent of chaos. So I don't really care whether or not kids have the stupid idea to start selling snacks at school. At that point, they might as well just start a kissing company like Butters did in South Park. But YouTubers who do this really piss me off because they are quite literally profiting off of encouraging children to do something that is technically illegal. Ain't no way they're making these clickbaity titles and thumbnails without receiving some kind of ad revenue. And yet, I'll get demonetized for saying Final Fantasy X served see you next Tuesday. So, So that's just fine. Anyway, I know these videos technically don't have anything to do with the fundraisers that we've been talking about, but something I did not have as a child was advice from these popular big kids at school who encouraged me to join a hustle culture that we love to fetishize, and I'm sure these idiots see a spike in ad revenue every time a new school fundraiser is announced. Just wanted to put that out there. You might be thinking, Francis, there's nothing wrong with teaching these kids business skills at a young age. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts do it all the time, and you haven't said a word about them. Well, here's the difference, my good bitch. Joining the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts is optional. And I know there are some millennial parents with face tattoos out there who will disagree with me on this, but school is not optional. But not only that, what exactly are children learning by participating in these? They might very superficially learn about the concept of supply and demand. They're certainly not learning what can be bought with disposable income. If the parents are the ones doing all the selling, the kids aren't learning the business and people skills. They're always brought up in the rhetoric that tries to defend this. The only thing they might learn, if they do this part themselves, is how to write down orders on a form, which is something they can learn in 10 years by getting a waitering job. But in the long run, what they do learn is that even if you work hard and you don't earn enough, the answer is to simply work harder. It is absolutely hammered into our brains from the time we exit the womb that if we work hard, it'll pay off. These fundraisers won't teach you anything about the external factors that might affect your business outcome, and they certainly won't teach you that there's anything wrong with the system, and that's by design. As Mary Porto wrote in an opinion piece for Lux Magazine, this has been romanticized as a warped kind of community care, which in fact reduces community to a series of transactions. Many may applaud school sales for teaching kids the value of hard work, entrepreneurship, and capitalist lessons like the customer is always right. Personally, I think it's depressing that school sales had 11-year-old me already aspiring to work through lunch. As I suggested earlier, certain aspects of these fundraisers are eerily similar to multi-level marketing. The big money chants at these flashy assemblies that whip a group of vulnerable but well-meaning people into a giant sales jerkfest. The social pressure to do well or else in order to gain the respect of your peers and superiors. The lame prizes that don't equal the cost of the product or the amount of labor involved. The sellers being the main buyers of the inventory. These independent contractors contacting every single friend and family member on social media about buying, formerly going door to door to do the same. Those independent contractors not actually earning a dime for their efforts. The reinforced idea that if you want to do better, all you have to do is work harder. The idea that if you're not happy with the result, you just didn't work hard enough. And those are just the MLMs and pyramid schemes you join as an adult. Imagine being 8 goddamn years old. And they say my community grooms kids. But please remember, this isn't really the fault of the schools, because what the f*** are they even supposed to do? If the Trump administration takes a break from bickering with Elon, what little money that was going to schools will be gone entirely if they actually gut the Department of Education like they've promised to, leaving the responsibility of funding to state and local governments. MLMs and pyramid schemes are rampant here in the States, and not just because of our fetishization of the American dream. It's because the whole country is run like a pyramid scheme. I don't know, my cute little tinfoil hat couldn't fit on top of this amazing wig, and maybe I'm reading a little too far into this, but somebody please convince me that this isn't by design. So this is the point in the video where I would do like a little John Oliver style wrap up where I talk about what we can do in the meantime. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. Obviously, schools need outside funding because federal and state governments would rather put a teacher's 2-year salary towards brand new cop cars in any of Forbes's top 10 safest cities in America. Kids fundraising for charities? Rad. Girl Scouts selling cookies? Fine, because joining the Scouts is optional. But like, there's got to be a way to financially support basic public education without grooming kids into being salespeople. Right? I don't know. I used to work in sales and it actually caused me to have a mental breakdown, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, except for the coworkers that caused it in the first place. I still think about how much I hate those people. Anyway, rant over. I know this isn't the kind of content I normally do, but it's been on my mind, and hey, I like to switch things up sometimes. I'll be back with the funny and silly things soon, I promise. I have a very silly job. I realized the other day, the job that I have is very silly. Anyway, speaking of funny and silly, let's check out the winning comments from the last video, and boy were there some bangers. You're on Candid Camera says, somewhere in hell, Osama bin Laden just had to watch a drag queen make fun of him for loving Naruto. Hendrix Roltz 9942 says, I woke up with a horrible cold this morning. I haven't had a voice all day, but the moment I saw my Sib's fave game FF7 listed on Osama bin Laden's hard drive, I climbed out of bed and shakily made my way out of my room to rasp out, Osama bin Laden played Final Fantasy VII to my horrified younger sibling. 10 out of 10 would shamble around to share the cursed knowledge again. And finally, and I can't remember the last time I laughed so hard at one of my comments, Buffeter PS1716 says, why is this dumb cowboy bitch hating on Chicken Little? Oh god, this is my favorite kind of comment. I have that screenshot favorited, and if you saw my other favorited pictures in my camera roll, you'd know what a big honor that is. You too could be the winner for the next video. Leave a comment below. I will pick my favorite ones and give you a shout out next time. If you would like to guarantee your name be featured at the end of every video, please consider joining my Patreon. If you join any of the membership tiers that are conveniently named after Fallout protagonists, your name will be featured at the end of every video. You might also get other cool things like access to my Discord, behind the scenes content on how I make my wigs, ad-free and uncensored versions of my videos. So if you love my content and my drag, you can support this channel directly by clicking the link to my Patreon in the description box. If you would like to see me simp for my favorite game characters and get visibly frustrated in real time, please follow me on Twitch. I stream most Saturday afternoons Pacific Standard Time, and I am still raising money for the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. If you would like to see even more of my clown mug elsewhere, please consider following me on Instagram or TikTok before it gets banned. My handle for all of the above is @QueenCokeFrancis. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't done so already, please go door to door to sell chocolate to your neighbors. And when they try to slam the door on you, put your foot in the doorway and make your way in by going ahead and unzipping your pants and dick slapping those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring this video, and thank you to all of my patrons and subscribers who have helped my channel grow and thrive the way that it has been. And of course, as always, until next time.